And then share my content. How do I do this? Oh, yeah, share content, screen.
Okay.
Broadcast. All right.
Should we?
Hi, everyone. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to start with some
Yes.
logistics here. For those people who are writing papers that kind of fell into my camp. I've read proposals from Nabila, Rasha, Khalil, Marilyn, Fabiana, Georgie, Maher, Dima, Hallie, Gloria, Shana, and Cynthia. I will be sending you my feedback as typed comments on your Word documents after class today, so you'll get that feedback. And I believe the grades already been posted, Shadi?
I haven't posted them yet. I'll post them after the class, so maybe half an hour after the class you should have.
This afternoon you'll get that. Sorry, it was a day late. I told you I'd have the stuff by Tuesday. In the beginning of this week, I got distracted by a couple of things. Okay, good. That's just logistics. By the way,
yeah.
Oh, just in general, they were very good. I was impressed, guys.
Yeah. I evaluated the rest, I guess, and also it's very. I mean, most of the things were really good. I mean, there are a couple of proposals. I think that for people who haven't discussed with us, that would need perhaps some work, right? So please take our comments into consideration.
Let's emphasize that again. If you're one of the handful of people that did not meet with either Shadi or I before you wrote your proposal, read the feedback we give you, and it's a good idea to then ask for a meeting with us, and we'll talk you through it. It really does help to just talk through so we can help you avoid going down dead ends or things that are taking it more common, actually taking on more than you can plausibly do in a project of this size. Okay.
Absolutely.
So do meet
exactly. Okay. So yeah, so today's topic is the first part of ownership, control, and access. That's what we call the module. And we had 3 readings: a video, which is a philosophy talk, so somebody presenting a philosophy paper, and Hans will have more to say about this. And then there were 2 articles that are talking about the AI landscape and in terms of tech companies and what's happening in the race for AI among these companies. That's one thing. And also, right, so not only when it comes to just technologies, but also talent, so human power. So really, these companies are trying to attract as many talented people as possible, but also they're trying to acquire many startups that are doing something related to AI. And there is a competition going on between these different tech companies. In fact, also other companies, like if you've read the paper, one of the articles talks about even McDonald's and other companies are on the race as well. Okay, so I have just I will start by two exercises, 2 simple exercises, questions on Socrative, and you kind of have to start the discussion about these 2 articles. So let me just launch it. And then I'm going to ask you to answer the question there. I'll send you the link in a second. Okay. So I need you now to go to, I'm going to write this in the chat. So here, everyone, go to .com and then enter room SE58. So you do a student login, and then you enter room SE58. Please let me know if it's not working for any of you. And just answer the question you will see there, which is really, the question is, If you want to see the question. How do I see the question? Let me see. Yeah. So what concerns do you have, if any, regarding the acquisition of many AI startups by major tech giants such as Google, Apple, and Amazon? There's also Facebook, of course, and Microsoft, right? So do you think this is okay? I mean, this is acceptable, or do you have any concern, ethical or otherwise, about this, acquisition war between these giant tech companies? Okay. I see most of you have gotten there. So none of you have answered yet for some reason, even though all of you are there. So take your time, it's fine. Think about this. Try to, remember the article as well. What the article did not mention any concerns per se. It just mentioned facts. Yeah, so it showed you how this is happening, which company is acquiring the most, etc. Okay. Okay, Yahya and Joseph, Majd, Marlon, Reem, and Rasha. Yeah, can you try to wrap it up so we can start the discussion, please? Okay, let's start looking at your answers. Okay, so here are the concerns that you have. Yeah, we can go through them quickly and see what you guys think. So just gonna, pick the first one just to see. So when big companies decide to acquire startup, they use all the means to do so. Like for example, when a startup owner refutes the acquisition, these companies start tweaking his startup in illegal ways. This makes it unfair for all small entrepreneurs trying to grow their startups. Okay, I'm gonna sample a few of them, and then we'll open the discussion. And I'm concerned that the information provided by these major tech giants would be limited only by them, and then we'll only receive the data they want. It will be restricted only by them. Okay. Again, control. So if somebody says, okay, 5 companies controlling the development path of these technologies because of these company influence on billions of people. Okay. So diversity of point of views regarding AI ethics. Okay. Monopolies. Okay. Little to concern.
The one that's bottom sees a positive and a negative that them you would look at.
Here's that.
I think.
Yeah. So this one is a positive one. So even though the articles made it seem like a bad thing, I think the acquisition can act as an incentive for many startups to develop and make several breakthroughs. Okay.
It's a very good angle which incentivizes entrepreneurs and developers
Okay.
to build.
Okay. So it seems, some of you think there is a concern, and it's mostly about monopoly and information or the advances in AI. So basically being really restricted to certain companies. The other people say it's actually a healthy thing, right? Promotes innovation and promotes and supports these companies. By, these it's up by big companies so they can advance more and Hans, you want to comment on anything, or should we hear one point
can
of view
I say
from
something?
each?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. Who's that?
Maher.
Maher.
Yeah, go ahead, Maher.
Yeah, so I'm going to share something from the point of view of startups, because this is something I've worked on for quite a large number of years, building several startups in the scene. So startups are built to answer a very specific problem and a very specific pain, and they're also triggered by VCs and by angel investors to drive this culture further to gain more money.
Can you tell us what the aim are?
VCs, venture capitalists, and angel investors are investors that basically come in at an early stage of a startup that put in some money, and they're not in large chunks to get you to get through the first stage, which is the seed stage or pre-Series A stages in investment. And VCs usually come in after Series A. So the whole discussion that takes place with angel investors and with VCs is exits. And how do you exit? How do you make money? How are you gonna make us money? There isn't a single startup that comes in with the objective that says, hey, I'm gonna build a business that's gonna be very sustainable on the long end, and I'm gonna create the X and so amount of money, except for the few Facebooks, Twitters, Pinterests that are out there that have made it all through and through. So effectively, the dependency on being acquired by a large company is what is driving startups to create tech and to innovate and to grow. So this is something that is embedded in the culture of investment and in the startup culture that exists, at least this part of the world and in some of the Bay Area, because I've also had exposure on the Bay Area as well. So the culture is there to create this tech, to create this following, to create this massive user base that becomes that whets the appetite of big tech companies to for acquisition. And when acquisition happens, this is the jackpot, right? So everybody wins. So that has a positive angle in the sense that it drives people from all over the world, entrepreneurs, developers, designers, what have we, to build this tech, to innovate on this tech, to create this tech for the hope of this later on acquisition that is going to happen. So just wanted to shed some light there.
Yeah. So I think that was shared by a couple of comments. Not maybe it wasn't very articulate as you did it, but it's really some people think it's a positive thing and it drives innovation and makes this culture. But there is the other concern, I think, right? So can somebody counter Maher's point of view if you have a different opinion? Does anyone want to chip in? Do you think what he said, do you all agree with it, or you still think there are certain issues with this acquisition business and
so if I can recap a little bit, Maher is challenging the main thesis of that piece of journalism that you read, saying, look, it isn't really a problem that these big companies buy the little companies. Actually, the people who start the little companies, their goal is to be bought by the big companies because that's where the money is. So I'm curious if what Shadi was asking is, do other people have a different opinion than that? Or are there something you'd want to share?
Nobody? So I see some of you are saying, okay, I mean, we can pick, someone if you don't want to volunteer. So I have to find the names of the people so I can't really figure out who's this. Can I know who this? No. Okay, let's go back. And scroll here. Okay. How about Ahmed? Ahmed, are you with us?
Yes.
Can you tell us? So you agree with Maher? I mean, I know Ahmed, your background is computer science, so maybe you would pick somebody from computer science and see. Do you agree with this argument that Maher just gave?
Yes, exactly. And Maher said it in a very good way that these startups, like, it's a temporary, maybe transition for developers and tech. So they present an idea and they just want some people to, I don't know, like get convinced. So their main idea might be just like to get fun or to innovative advances. So I don't think it's a bad thing in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so who's commented this? This one was tech giants being the most active, acquirers of AI startups. Maybe you wanna tell us a little bit more what you mean. This one, right?
Yeah, that's me.
Was that
Yeah.
Danny? Yeah. Danny? No, that's Yahya.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Tell us, yeah.
I'm just thinking that, as you said, it's, I mean, by oligopoly is just monopoly, but since there are more than one tech firm, so it makes sense to say oligopoly, which is the equivalent of monopoly, but more than one company. So
Okay.
it's more like, as you said, that makes companies acquire more data and preserve it from themselves for their selves, and I think that's the major concern.
Yeah, yeah. So there is,
Other than
one. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, that's the major concern. Although we have a lot of advantage for this, of course, as Maher said, it makes it develops AI more and supports this field. But I think being this acquisition makes tech giants acquire and preserve it for themselves. And yeah, that is a major concern.
Okay. I see. Right. Yeah. So we're talking about this, me and Hans. I remember when we were discussing the reading material, and Hans told me about this, case against the Google, right? Just recently. So the Department of Justice is saying, that Google is actually is doing a sort of a monopoly, and they're really influencing, or affecting other competition. So, I mean, to an extent, if you have these giant companies really having the best technology, they will get the best or most users, and then they can get more data. So it becomes, it keeps on growing in their direction. Yeah, just because they get more users and they get more data, and so they will be able to develop better technologies. And the issue is that they influence a lot of things. Yeah, so the main concern for me, at least, is that they have a saying in many things. If they own these technologies and they're the only ones that own it, and they don't open it up and they don't share it with other people, with these companies, then there is a big issue. Yeah, that really they have a lot of sayings in almost every aspect of our lives. I don't know if Hans agrees with me.
And there's two. It's useful to look at the history of this, right? Because nobody knows how to think about this technology stuff. The two biggest instances where the U.S. government decided that there were monopolies that were just ridiculous and they needed to be broken up. One is the phone company, what people used to call Ma Bell, which then became AT&T. There was one company that built the infrastructure for making phone calls in the United States. And it used to be a very big thing. If you lived in, say, Chicago and you needed to call somebody in Baltimore, planning for that and being very careful about how long you were on the phone was really important, because you could end up getting charged $40 for a long distance phone call. Now we are all used to Skype and WhatsApp, and we think that's really ridiculous to charge for a phone call, but it was a big issue. And but then their argument was, the people who worked for Bell said, well, we built the phone lines. Who else was going to do that? The government wasn't going to come in and do that. We built it, so it's ours. But eventually the government said, look, that's fine, but you just guys are charging too much. We need to, and so they broke them up into regional companies, and then that's from Sprint and these other companies that provided specifically long distance. And that was one. And another one was Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie, the university in Pittsburgh, it's named after him, Carnegie Mellon, and the library system in the US is built by far the wealthiest person in the world at one point. What he did was he owned railroad companies and said to every other person, if you want to move oil, coal, food from one part of the country to another, you have to come through me. And then he started buying up those. He bought up the oil companies, he bought up the lumber companies, and so that's what people are worried about, that Google has such a, I mean, it's a verb. You Google to get information, right? When people go on the web to get information, they go through there, and it's a bit different model because it isn't that you pay to do it, but you pay in a different way. You give away privacy, you give away information about yourself.
Yeah.
Google has that information on everybody with an internet connection in the world. That is an extremely powerful position. There's no government that's even close to that. So it's unprecedented. There's never been a company with that sort of, I don't know if monopoly is the right word, but that sort of, to be a bit graphic about it, that sort of stranglehold on us when you want information about, I don't know, whether your foot is hurting. In the process of doing that, you give information about yourself to this one company in California.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing, I think.
True.
Yeah. So am I crazy to be worried about that, or do people think that that's a concern? Am I just an old fuddy-duddy who thinks who needs to get used to the idea that Google's more important than the Soviet Union used to be?
Well, so can I say something related to that? Yeah, all right, cool. So definitely the issue of the issue of monopoly is a big issue here. Though they've circumvented that by creating the duopolies, triopolies, and what have we. If you remember back in when Steve Jobs went back to Apple, he came in with a large investment coming from Bill Gates, his arch nemesis at the time, to as part of Microsoft's strategy to create, to not be a monopoly at the time and be in line with the US laws. And right now we have the biggest data hoarders. I can name them. They are between Facebook, Google, Apple, and we also have the telco companies, and we forget about them, how much data we have about us in that particular sense. So the question would be, rather than having a monopoly, because it's not really, it's split over multiple ends, how do you incentivize the market economy to sustain small companies and allow them to grow without them selling out to large tech giants? So it becomes an economic problem that is also at the same time an ethical problem as well. So it is not one and not the one dimensional on this side. At least this is how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even bring up the money side of it, which is just that the services would be cheaper if there were more. But it is hard to think about, and this is one of the brilliant things that they did. But there's an interesting slogan: zero is a very dangerous price point. We don't think of ourselves as paying to these companies because Facebook and Google, they offer it for free, but that of course is not the end of the story. What the product is, our information. That's what everybody wants, and that's why they offer these. So they've really put people in a situation where you don't even know that you're paying the price that you are. So it's different than the old model of non-competitive, where you end up being able to charge people $40 for a half-hour phone call. It's very complicated, as Maher points out. Yeah, it's an interesting thing.
Yeah. Okay, for the sixth time, maybe we move to the second article. So the one regarding the acquisition of talents, really. So the article, the one I think was called $1 Million Baby or something like this, argues the following: that these tech companies are basically competing with academia and attracting top AI researchers. So whether these are students who just graduated, or even researchers who are established in universities, or professors, they really taking a lot of this task force from academia towards these companies, and they have good arguments for this. So even some researchers do have arguments for why they would move to industry, or why they want to at least transition there temporarily. And there's the counter argument why this is problematic. So I want to ask you, if you're concerned with this culture which is, getting people who have, background in computer science, and not necessarily computer science now, yeah, even, ethics and anything that is related to technology or is going to benefit these companies. They really try to attract them by offering them huge salaries and great packages, and this is leaving academia in a problem, because we're not finding enough people to hire, to advance research, and so on. So I want to see what your stand on this, whether you're concerned with this or you think this is totally fine, it's a fair competition. Yeah, try not to take to consume too much time. We just want an impression, so that we have time for the last discussion, which Hans will take care of.
Professors?
Yes.
Hey,
Yeah.
I left for a couple of minutes because of my Wi-Fi. It started raining, so the electricity played a bit. So what's happening? I just arrived.
So just go to Socrates again and just enter the room SE58.
Okay.
There's another question, right, that we want you to answer.
Yeah, I did the first one. This is the second one?
Yeah.
Okay.
This.
Johnny, did you write the question, or was it just you just say it?
Yeah. So
I
the question is what?
It's at the top of the poll, actually. Yeah.
What? I didn't get that.
The question's at the top of the poll. What concerns do you have regarding the trend of AI experts moving into industry rather than academia?
Oh, I didn't do that one.
That's the one where we're doing now. So
Okay,
you go back to, same thing, go to SE58
Well,
and so.
Okay, thanks, professors.
Sure. So let's try to wrap this up in like 4 minutes. Please provide your answers, right? You have some time to discuss it and then move on. Okay, great. Let's start looking at some of the answers. Okay. So interesting. I see there is not a consensus here. know, some people
Yeah.
are concerned, some are thinking this, and this is, you know, actually a good thing. Okay. Can I start with this one? So my concern is highlighted in the document, which is academia always allows story research that is open and shared, while the industry that is still concerned with research is more concerned with money and protecting information. Who's commented that? If you're willing to elaborate on this. Was that?
That's mine, Maher. So,
Maher, yeah. Go ahead.
So yeah, the thing is with academia, it's always about, you know, understanding research, pushing up the boundaries of science in a certain direction, and it's all about sharing those outputs, publishing papers, white papers, research, and this is and teaching, you know, others as well into that new frames of thought, and this is the main value that I see being presented in academia, while taking it into industry, although pushing towards a certain research is definitely relevant and is actually found in industry. However, not all industries are published or are open sourced software in the sense of computer science, and mostly are black boxes and algorithms that are run and protected by IPs and trade secrets in that sense. So even though the industry gets definitely advancing in a certain direction, however, it is not totally shared by the public. So that's the major concern that I have on that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think what you're saying, Matt, is basically your concern is that, you know, this will affect the openness of the advancement of the field because of the you know, case of universities. You do research that is open and published. That's your end goal, really, is to share your results and your algorithms, or your basically research methodologies with other people. Whereas in companies, they tend to, you know, because of they want to protect their trade and they want to protect their edge over competitors, they tend to not share you know, anything that they're doing, even though they might be doing exciting research that is relevant and interesting and advancing field. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of advancement that comes from companies, yeah, but most of it, as you said, is closed.
It's very often in employees, big companies, that they're not allowed to tell other people about the findings. And it's exactly the opposite paradigm of academia, where the point is to try to get it out there. That's So that's a real difference.
Yeah. So what happens is, right, we usually, I mean, when we're doing PhD, for instance, when I was doing PhD, we have the ability to do you know, an internship for a few months in Google, or, you know, wherever you want. And what they usually do with these internships, the first thing is they make you sign a non-disclosure agreement. So you can really talk about anything you're doing, right? Anything you're doing in the company, anything you're doing. And at the end, right, after the end of your internship, they decide whether this is useful for them, or, you know, this is okay, you can publish. And so in some projects, they tell you, you know, yeah, that's fine, go publish it, because they know that there's no real, you know, money that is going to come out of this. So it's fine for them to, you know, share this research with other people. And then if it's, you know, something that is going to bring the money, they usually allow you to even discuss it with you come back from to your colleagues and your group after 3 months, and you can't even say a single word about what you've been doing for the past 3 months, not even to your advisor. Yeah. So it's a bit crazy in that sense. However, I mean, I want to add something that, I mean, Google has also led to a lot of advancements in the AI field, right? They're the ones who provided, you know, Keras, if I'm not mistaken, which is the framework that, you know, a great framework for deep learning. They provided some data sets. They provided, you know, certain algorithms. I think there's a neural network architecture that is very famous by Google that is currently open source and used by others. So just, we have to be careful, right? There are also, you know, they tend to do some open source research. They also fund a lot, you know, projects in universities, at least right now. So we have even one, you know, I know colleagues of mine that have a fund from Google and working on AI here at AUB. Yeah, so there is, you know, two sides of the story to an extent. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some of it has to do with economies of scale, right? Isn't if I understand it correctly, isn't almost all the work on self-driving cars being done by private companies because it just takes so much?
Yeah.
There is one
Yeah,
on self-driving
yeah,
cars
so
called
it's
Comma.ai, though, however, that they are outsourcing their, you know, they're publishing their code, which is,
Yeah.
you know, it's a private initiative.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, just one thing. So I think one thing I want to add is the following, that, you know, a lot of these companies actually started by taking what we're doing, what our research. Yeah. So for instance, the knowledge graph of Google, which is the one used to answer questions like you can ask with the current president of the United States. You know, it will tell you Trump now, maybe in a couple of days, it will tell you Biden, who knows. But these answers that they're getting is based on this knowledge graph, which actually started in a research group, and then it was published and open source, and Google used it, right? And they leveraged a lot of things that actually came from research. So most of these companies use research results for, top research results from, big groups, and they actually take it and use it, and they advance it. But so I think, yeah, on the long run, if academia is not supported, and if you don't put, give them money and data and collaborate with them from the industry side, this is gonna be the end of really true advancement in the field, in my opinion. Yeah, these companies cannot sustain without this, without supporting academia. Just one last remark, that actually Google, if you know that Google started as a, these two, the owners were, or the founders were PhD students at Stanford, and they dropped. This is a great example of what happened, right? They dropped out of, they didn't finish their PhD, they moved to industry and started Google, and now, they're, maybe they made a good choice, maybe not, but yeah, this is just a background information in case you don't know it.
Though this steps into
Right.
another discussion, though, if academia is dead, then if there's a future for academia to begin with as a whole sector.
Yeah,
I mean,
not sure
with
what
the
you mean
easy-
by academia is bad.
No, I mean by the future.
Yeah.
So there is, a couple of postulate theories that comes up there in terms of if you want to access some knowledge, there are multiple sources out there that are present. There are the private sector that is there. So if you want to learn programming, you can do that on your own. In the sense, if you want to get some business knowledge, you can do that on your own in a certain open source software.
Yeah, I
etc.
see what you're saying,
So,
man. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I want to say that, okay, it's off topic a little bit, but academia is not just, teaching basic things, right? It's what we're doing right now. It's these discussions. You do research, brainstorming with a lot of people. So it's umbrella is much wider than just teaching, fundamental things, like techniques or algorithms.
It's more than teaching job skills. It's about making citizens who are capable of critically evaluating governments and challenging authority and a lot of things that, and in particular, the liberal arts model is about that. It's about making citizens that will not let companies and governments run everything. That's the hope. Okay, so let's talk about this philosophical argument from that Canadian
Stop
philosopher.
sharing in case you want to share.
Yeah, I will. So I noticed somebody in the discussion, somebody mentioned algocracy and kind of used it as a synonym for these companies having lots of power. And it's important. One of the things that's important to notice here is that this philosopher has a very technical notion of what algocracy is. It's not just sort of technological power or wealth. So that's what we want to do first, understand what algocracy is. Okay. So he started with this story, right? I'm sure people remember, where this guy he gets a piece of mail from the government saying, from the Department of Motor Vehicles saying, you no longer have a driver's license, it's been canceled. And it turned out that a face recognition software had determined that his picture was very much like somebody else's picture. And the inference made by the system, I hope my voice is coming through okay, but the inference made by the system was that, well, this is probably a fake driver's license. This is probably a criminal who's using somebody else's identification because it looks too similar. And he said, but no, this is me, I'm saying who I am. And this is very similar to the situation described in Weapons of Mass Destruction with that teacher. They said, well, maybe you are who you say you are, but the burden is on you to prove it. And so he needed to come up with a rational, legalistic argument to counter this algorithmic decision made. So that's the idea, that there's what an algocracy is ruled by algorithm, where there's an asymmetry between what the algorithm needs to come up with to impose something on you and what you need to do in order to try to check that imposition. Okay, so one thing that's important is often when this fellow presents this work, people say, are you talking about robots taking over the world? He's like, no, that's a different kind of thing. Read Robert Heinlein to think about that. I'm not talking about robot artificial agents. This is a government system, a governance system in which computer code structures and constrains how human beings interact with a particular decision-making process. So that's what an algocracy is. And again, this is what I just went through. There's much like the teacher case in the O'Neill article, it's very hard to counter the argument. Okay, good. Now, he thinks there's 3 different ways that this can play out. And this comes up, we've talked about humans in the loop before, and that's one of them. Where you have a human in the loop, where, and he was looking at some people writing about the ethics of war, and in particular drones. We have one where the drone finds the target, and sometimes with some human interaction, but it's put in there that the human being has to make the decision about whether to drop the bomb on the target. And but this isn't just for drones. This is larger, right? So the idea applied to the other one, it would be something comes up and you say, oh, should this person have their driver's license taken away? And it's a human who makes it. That's human in the loop. There's also this idea of a human on the loop system. I guess the one that we've seen that would most similar to this is where you have the person in the car, right? Where the human can stop the car if they think it's going to hit somebody. And we had that famous case in Arizona where the person didn't do that and it ran over the person pushing the bike. And then humans out of the loop systems. This is what happened with this driver's license case. There was no human involved. The algorithm just, it was set up to do face recognitions and then made a decision. So that can go that way. Then I'm not sure how useful this will be, but I'll go through the structure he set up. He said, well, that's a 3-part model. You can also have a 4-part model where there's sensing, processing, actuating, and then learning. And in each of the 4 of those vectors, the balance between human and machine, can vary. So you can have machines doing all the learning, or being guided by people, and the rest. And actuating, again, is like your own case. Okay, now, so why does he think this is a threat, and why does he think it's a unique threat? And this is what's interesting and important about this, is what makes this specifically an ethical issue that's connected to artificial intelligence, right? And that is one of the things we're trying to figure out in this field. This is brand new, that there are courses called the ethics of artificial intelligence. So in what ways are these specific or unique to this new technology, or what way is it just other kinds of ethical problems? there's the hiddenness concern, right? Where when you walk around with your phone, it may be the case that somebody's gathering information about everywhere you go. Maybe not. You don't know. You don't know what's being done with the global positioning system in your phone. And the other one is the opacity concern. And this one we've talked about before, where you get this black box scenario where not only does the general public, but maybe not even the designers who make the machine learning systems can explain how the decisions are getting made, because the machines learn and then do their thing, and it no longer works according to, say, a programmable system. It's doing its own thing. Now, as is common when a philosopher thinks about it, one of the ways that when philosophers figure out how good a position or an argument is we think, well, what's the smartest thing that somebody who disagrees with me could say against what I'm trying to argue? And this guy says, look, how is this unique in artificial intelligence ethics? Isn't it just, okay, so does this just to another form of human unfair rule? We talked about the phone company and Carnegie owning all this stuff and having all this power and money. Isn't it just like that? And here's what I want you to think about, because this is the tricky bit. The author of this article, the speaker that you saw present his article, he says, no, it doesn't just reduce to another form of the capitalists having a bunch of power, the capitalists who own these companies having a bunch of power, or say in China with the government having all this information and power. It isn't just that, it's a new and unique kind of threat to our privacy and to our ability to answer these criticisms. Why? I would now like people to help us understand why this is unique and isn't just another example of capitalists having too much money and power. Can somebody help us out with that, please? Just trying to look for my chat because I don't see my chat.
I have it open if you can. Okay, guys, chip in.
So again, if that was not clear, why is this a different kind of threat to us than just the same old threat of companies or governments having too much power? What's unique about this threat to our privacy and our ability to interact with power?
So just let me rephrase the question. The question is how is this different from governments attaining power by themselves? Because I just got confused by the question.
Think of the situation of that guy whose driver's license got canceled, right? It's always inconvenient and annoying when, you know, what the old saying is, you can't fight City Hall. When the government does something that limits your ability to do what you want to do, that's always been a problem. So this philosopher is trying to present that when that decision gets made by an algorithm, it's a unique and different kind of problem than we have traditionally had when our interests got butt up against a powerful organization like a rich company or a government. Why is it unique and different as opposed to this same old problem of the government can be a bully and push you around? That's the question.
Well, one of the things is that, you know, algorithms decisions are usually final, and you know we literally have little tolerance for errors that might exist in that, while we can contribute to human error in making decisions much easier than we can actually contribute that or attribute that to an algorithm making an error. So if I am to judge a person, I might be accused of having a bias or making a mistake or overlooking a certain data into the process. While if an algorithm is making that decision, so the decision is more likely to be accurate. So refuting that decision might be troublesome. That is from one perspective. The other perspective is we are not sure by the way that this algorithm is making this decision. So I can know in general how is that arriving to that decision, but in a very particular case, can I be able to trace it through the loopholes and through the gateways in the decision-making process? And that is not clear. And as a citizen, I need to be aware of the entire process of the decision-making effort that is being made. And in the case of an algorithm, it's a black box. And I believe that's the opacity problem, that the concern that Dinar was actually referring in his paper.
Yes, that notion of the black box is the sort of context-specific notion of the opacity problem. But one might think that exists in other contexts too, right? If you just can't get a large bureaucracy to explain to you why they made the decision they did, I don't know, you get rejected when you apply for a university and you get told no, you can't come. And so, well, why? What could I do to improve this? And they say, well, we can't give you any information about that. That is an opacity concern just by policy. So the question here is how do we? Why does this philosopher think that decisions made by algorithms are different in kind and not just in degree from decisions made by large organizations that we may have trouble getting answers from? Can anybody else help us with this?
I think it's a difficult question, Hans, because I had similar answers to Maher. I mean, from what I remember as well. Right? So it's basically you cannot challenge the decision and you cannot really explain it. Yeah.
And could it also be that you don't know who's to blame?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it. No, I'm being a little coy here because I actually am not sure I'm convinced by Danaher's response to this objection. I don't know if he's published more about this, but I'd want to know more about why this is unique. I mean, has it come up yet? I mean, when you have these, we got discussed in the moral crumple zones. Do people find it more frustrating or unjust when a relative dies in an airplane crash where a machine had learned was doing most of the flying? Do we find that more, I don't know, less accountable? I'm not sure.
About accountability, if it's a government or a certain set of people who are making decisions that you don't agree with, you can blame them. You can blame their mindset, say that they're unfair. But if it's a machine, you start, I don't know, I feel like it just feels bad to fight a machine because what are you gonna blame?
Yeah. So it's again, that I think is a really nice point, Shana. It's again the issue that came up in moral crumple zones. We say, well, we've got a decision maker that's not a person, and it's really only people that we're comfortable holding responsible for things. We don't know how to we don't know how to ask questions of the algorithm, and also we don't really have the intuitions of seeing an algorithm as morally bad yet. And that may be what needs to come. Good, thank you for that. Just in kind of thinking through what algocracy is, in the kind of cases we've considered so far, I gave one example for each, but I'm curious if people can think of examples of these three categories of where a decision gets made in part or in whole by an algorithm. What can somebody, how about these, to pull these two apart? Can someone give us an example of a human in the loop system and a human on the loop system? I think it's useful to think through with the different kinds of things, different kinds of scenarios.
Maybe I could try.
Yeah, sure.
Human in the loop might be the ones with the rates of recidivism. So the algorithm would calculate that, but then the judge has the final decision if the person's to stay in jail more or get parole or etc. Whereas a human on the loop, we could think of it like the pilot. So he can intervene when he wants to on the plane, for example.
Yeah, that's right. So in a human in the loop, for the recidivism case, the goal of the algorithm is to provide advice or input to the human judge, and the idea is that advice is supposed to be more fair or less biased than standardly comes from judges, because judges tend to think people who are like them are more likely to be good. Yeah, good. And then, sorry, remind me what your example for the second case was, the human on the loop?
The autopilot on the plane. So the first example could also in the future turn to human on the loop. So if in the future algorithms would take over that case, and then judges would only partly decide if they want to intervene or not.
Right. Yeah. I was talking, I'm curious where this third case would fit in, with this particular case. I was talking to, she's an MA candidate in our department. She's also a pilot. There was some publicity about her recently. She was the pilot in the first female crew that flew for MEA. Rita.
Rula.
Yeah. She gave a presentation on AI a couple of years ago. Yeah. And she talks about a situation where she says it's really most important, the AI in planes is in and around airports, not when you're just sort of flying and up, sort of out in open space, but where somebody's made a mistake and one plane is landing and one's taking off, and they get close enough, and the two planes talk to each other and they avert in a way that doesn't involve overreacting, where the person might go, and really pull it and could send the plane out of control. She says it's really amazing how you'll be in a dangerous situation and the two planes avoid each other in a way that just does it carefully and no big reaction. That seems to be a fourth category, doesn't it? What would that be? Machine on the loop? I think so, right? So the human is normally for taking off and landing, because you have to do all this talking to the control tower. The person does it, and the machine can intervene if the person does something. Yeah. So there are also other possibilities here. So, just your opinions. Do you think this philosopher is correct to tell us that this is something we should be worried about? Did it make you nervous to listen to his talk?
Maybe let's start by the first question. Did you listen to his talk? So did you just read the, the thesis he has, under the video? Did you manage, all of you, did you listen to the video? Yes, no? Okay, so Khalid say yes. Okay.
I had a problem with the video.
Okay, good. Yeah, in what way?
I think the recording of the video was pretty bad. The audio was very far. So I looked up his original paper, and I read the original paper.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so most of you looked at the video. Okay. So now that's a good start. So maybe repeat the question, Hans, if you can.
Is he right to tell us that this is something that we need to be worried about? That that it's a real threat? Should we be worried about the threat of autocracy? That's my question.
I think we really should, because it goes back to no one being held accountable, and then decisions being made for you, which are wrong. So it's just a snowball effect of. It's like what O'Neill said, that it doesn't matter who benefits as long as people suffer.
Yeah. This is, we can't respect this, we don't understand. Yeah. Can people think of specific examples that you've heard about or read about that look like instances of this, of people being impacted negatively by our ability to interact with the system being constrained? Do people know of examples like this? I wouldn't want an algorithm to decide if I got into university not or a job or not. Yeah, good. That's the kind of concern. One of the examples that popped to mind for me, because it's so insidious and hidden. This was in the news maybe 6 months ago, that people found out that this again is data from the US, as we so often have it, that people even of the same income level, if they were of European descent, aka white, and were looking for real estate listings, the ads that the offers that the machine would put up were for mortgages and purchasing houses. And if you were of African descent, aka Black, the software would give up options for renting. And so it could be possible that you think the only places to live in your community, in your city, are renting, and then you don't get a mortgage, and you don't put together get a mortgage and get equity and get wealth that you can pass on to your kids, and the whole cycle continues. And so and that's not even something that it's not that some malicious person tried to do that. It just the history sort of feeds into it. Fewer Black people have mortgages, so they think that the algorithm just says, based on the patterns we know, this is the kind of person who rents. So yeah, this and that's not like a law. It's just what a marketing thing chooses to do. So that's the kind of thing I think that where this appears. Good. That was kind of a complicated argument, and I'm thank you for your patience in working through it. I think you've got it though. I think you've got the main gist of what he was after. So that's good. Okay. We're coming up on 3:15 now.
Yeah. Just wanted to add one last thing. So when we said human in the loop, right, the definition was that it's, you know, the final decision is for the humans, but we tend to use this term in other contexts or in other meanings as well, or it has other meanings. So you could see it the other way around. It's just really the human is just another component in the system. So let's say you're maybe a nurse, right? Could be a human in the loop. So she just gets your, you know, your symptoms and stuff like that, and insert them into a system, and the system would actually diagnose you. Yeah. So it could be that the human in the loop means it's just one, you know, operator or a sensor, similar to any other sensor. Yeah. We're trying to move away from this term to kind of, because it's a little bit confusing. It could have multiple meanings. So in the community, at least, we're trying to move away from this term.
No, that's a really good point. And this is one of the things, because this is such a new field, there isn't a consistency in the terminology. And as he mentioned, I got these three distinctions from people writing about the ethics of drone warfare. And that's obviously a very specific application, where if you're thinking about the ethics of diagnosing diseases, it's going to look very different. So good. Yeah, thank you for that. That's useful. And this is a constant issue for us because there isn't, and it's good. It's also why philosophers should be talking, ethicists should be talking to computer scientists, so we know those differences.
Sounds good. Yeah. All right, great. One last thing. So do you guys all have Netflix, or anybody doesn't have a Netflix account? It's not, we're just curious because we found something that might be interesting and we wanted to share with everyone. So
we wanted to know if we don't want to require it if people don't have Netflix. So give us a quick sense. Yes, so that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That looks
okay. Miguel. Okay.
Yes,
yeah, yes, it's a social. Okay. All right.
Are we being accused of shilling for Netflix? Okay, so maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah. We'll just tell you about it.
I mean, we don't know.
It's just saying, you know, yeah. Just if you have an account and you're interested in it, we're not gonna require it, but we think it's quite interesting. It's relevant to what we've been talking about as well. Yeah, particularly this issue. With,
and social dilemma, and we'll put that on the Moodle page, right? For like under this recommend
additional resources.
Extra readings.
Yeah.
Oh, Vincent's already watched these.
Yeah.
So that'll be something we can talk about.
Okay, great.
Thank you for your time and attention.
And we'll talk to you all next week.
Thank you, professors.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Professor, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
About the grades for the outline for today, or?
Yeah, today.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to speak very briefly to Jerzy about the question he asked me on chat at the beginning. Listen, so is the idea, Jerzy, that you have one more semester to